Hi, everyone. This is Pauline Meyer, and welcome to the Lafaya Way series with Lafaya Mitchell, licensed marriage and family therapist and the author of the best-selling The Lafaya Way book series. Lafaya's specialty is working with hypersensitive kids, teens, and adults, and she has an amazing guest today, guys. Her guest is Abi VanDoorne.
Dorn.
She is, you guys wait for this, the host of the ADHD podcast, Equilateral, right? Equilateral.
Yeah.
Thank you. And they're going to be discussing living with ADHD. And if you have any questions or comments, please put it in the comment section here on Facebook, and the ladies will answer your questions. So, Lafaya, take it away.
All right. Okay. So, Abi, first I have to ask you, where did you get the name Equilateral from?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I'm not creative when it comes to naming things at all. So, of course, I was like, ADHD puns. Like, I just looked that up in Google, and there was like some silly joke. It was like, what do you call a triangle with ADHD? And an equilateral triangle. I was like, that's the only funny one here. That we'll go with it. So
winner.
That works.
That's awesome. I absolutely love playing at words. Like, that's like my favorite thing to do ever. So I had to ask.
I'm not good at it on my own. Like, I have to. Yeah.
So you mentioned starting a podcast. Tell me a little bit about what made you get started. Like, what day did you just kind of wake up and say, okay, I'm going to start a podcast, or what was your journey?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in podcasts or like even just like starting my own little projects, things like that. So it's kind of always been on my radar. But with ADHD specifically, we'll probably talk about this a little later, but when I got diagnosed, I was kind of like sharing some of that journey with my friends on Instagram, things like that. And people kept like messaging me, and they were like, oh, like, this sounds like me, but I didn't think I had ADHD, or yeah, like, this sounds like me, but my parents won't let me get diagnosed, or, just like things like that. And then as it, I was like, oh, like, this is something that's really affecting a lot of the people I know, like specifically a lot of the women that I know. And they were all my age, which you tend to think of ADHD as something that, elementary school boys get. But, I was just kind of starting to think about that. It's like, wow, there are a lot of my friends who are really thinking about this, but didn't like know about it before I told them. And I realized that was kind of a conversation that just needed to be had. It's not something that many people are talking about. And yeah, I just decided, okay, you know what? Let's go for it. I'll talk to my friends and we'll just see what we have to say and see if it.
I love that. And you know what? Really think about it out there. Most of the time when we hear ADHD, just think about it. When you hear ADHD, don't you picture, like she said, that little boy, running around the classroom and running circles around their teachers, and isn't that what you tend to picture when you think ADHD? I don't think I really realized how much my mind, when you say ADHD, say the words, use the acronym ADHD, how much my mind goes straight to that little boy. So that's very interesting. And that's something that I'm really excited that you've decided to address, because it's something that it has gone unaddressed for far too long. This specific issue is, our girls getting lost. And so what was it like for you growing up with, as a person living with ADHD, but undiagnosed?
Yeah. Oh, that's a really, really good question. I'm 20. I got diagnosed this year. And for so long, I was just like kind of okay. I was doing okay. I was a straight A student all the way through high school, freshman year of college. Like, I was doing fine. I mean, I was a very big procrastinator, but all of that was fine. All of the things that you might recognize right away as like, oh, they might have ADHD, like trouble in school and things like that. I didn't have any of that. But what I did have was emotional issues. ADHD can cause emotional dysregulation. You can feel emotions way stronger, like frustration and anger and things like that. And I think that was the major thing that I have struggled with my whole life. And I've always been asking myself, like, why am I such an angry person? Why am I like this? Why can't I do this? And it was really getting to a point, and it still sort of is, where it's affecting my relationships, like with my family and with my friends and things like that, which is a problem. But before I got diagnosed, I had no idea that that was caused by something I had no control over.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of symptoms for undiagnosed people can cause a lot of self-esteem issues and a lot of self-doubt and anger at yourself, because you're like, what is wrong with me? Like, I am trying 110%, I'm doing my best and it's never enough.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was a really just the relief that I felt, the weight that was lifted off my shoulders when I learned, oh, like, wait, this isn't my fault. I think that was definitely the biggest thing.
Oh my goodness. See, okay, so that's so awesome because that's actually a piece of the work that I do and what I'm seeking to educate people on the fact that there's hypersensitivity in
Yeah.
multiple, disorders. I don't love the word disorders, but okay, differently ordered, right? Right? Differently ordered, right? Differently able,
I like
right?
that.
But ooh, me too. I just made that up. Anyway,
You
um, I'm trying to move into a space where people learn to coin the term hypersensitive, so that whether diagnosed or not, because see, that's our girls fall through the cracks because they don't look like your traditional ADHD little boy in the classroom running circles around the teacher, failing each class, and all that. They don't look like that. But they do have those emotional hypersensitivities that create disruption in their ability to function, right? And then it causes all kinds of self-esteem issues. And I find it very interesting that, and it's just so wonderful to hear you, able to express this, because this may help somebody out there listening right now. They may think, oh my goodness, okay, is that something that I live with or that I struggle with? And I always, I struggle with those kind of words because some of it is just, it gives us, it can be our superpower too, right?
Yeah.
So we can take it, we have a multitude of negative emotions, channeled properly. You can turn that into something that can help you be quite successful. But those are things that we don't get to know if we're down on ourselves. If we're thinking there's something so wrong with us, right? So I love hearing that. That's so fantastic.
And I always say, like, knowledge is power. When it comes to like diagnosis specifically, it's like, well, even if you're not sure whether you want to know, it's so good because then you can have that grace for yourself. Even if you don't need treatment, even if it doesn't affect your life otherwise, I think it's really, just for yourself.
So now tell me what, and you gave us just a little taste, but what other differences did actually getting diagnosed make in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so number one was, that kind of self-forgiveness, which was really, really big in my mental health, especially, like kind of end of last year, that was so big. But yeah, I think some other things that kind of came of that were I could start like seeking to improve. And the diagnosis and all of that, like that was kind of a big reason I took some time off of school. Because I was having a rough go of it. Like I kind of crashed and burned last year. And it's good for me to like have time to try out meds and find a good therapist that can help me so that I can succeed when I do go back.
Yes.
So, and even if I don't continue with meds. I'm still kind of on the fence, honestly. Even if when I get therapy, like that kind of thing, I think that's like so big because I wouldn't have that. Like I don't have access to those things without knowing that, this is something that affects me.
Exactly. So you're taking now, it opens up your options.
Yes.
Right. So all of a sudden now you have all kinds of doors that open that you don't have to walk through everyone. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But they're doors to problem solving, because when it's just what's wrong with me, or or why am I like this, and those kind of things, then first and foremost, there's really not much growth at all that can happen with us making those statements towards ourselves. So if you're out there and you're making those kind of statements towards self, it is so worth it for you to seek whatever help it is that you need in order to get the proper, diagnoses. Now with Abi, you take one look at her and you think, oh my goodness, look at this intelligent, beautiful, young lady, right? And then when you have challenges, so it challenges that, your intellect is not impacted by the challenges. It's more of, those things, those unseen things other people can't quite see. Right. So now you can't quite make it through getting the assignments done because you're feeling, overwhelmed with emotion. Right.
Yeah.
Right? and so it's so important to make sure that you find out what's going on with you so that you give yourself more options.
Right, exactly. And another big thing that I forgot to mention is accessibility services, like at school. Because, I was not the type of person to be like, oh, like I need help in school, because I was like straight A student. But like I know now that maybe I do need that. And also because I have that diagnosis, there are additional resources that are available to me. Like,
Very true.
your time on an exam, like extended deadlines, things like that. That you can't really get that if you don't have like a doctor's note, you could say.
Right. Very true.
Yeah. No, even for that, like I think that's really, really big.
No, that's huge. That's so huge there. And now I hope everybody's out there hearing this. Now, simply because especially if you're highly intelligent, right? And it's not that you can't understand the work or can't do the work, right? It's more that there are other areas of challenge that impede your ability. So the way that I like to envision it is that, you have the ability, right? And you stand over to the left, and the ability is over there to the right, and there's a space in between. So that we now have to build the bridges to get you from here to there. So it's not an impossibility. It's just there are some things that are necessary, some things that have to be laid down so that you can walk across, right? And some of those things are the accommodations. Some of those things can be medication, depending on your preference, right? Because it's okay to be on the fence. It's important to empower yourself with the information that you need. And then you say, okay, well, maybe I could use the medication to take enough of the edge off of the emotional side of the chemical piece of it, so that I can, kind of make it through, right? And so it makes it so much easier for you. I'm so excited to hear that. And Abi, just so you know, I do know resources out there, so that if you need to advocate for your accommodations rights, I can point you in the direction that you need to go for that.
All right, good to know.
Because sometimes in colleges, they really try not to give them to you, but there are ways to go about getting there.
I think my school is pretty good with that. I guess we'll find out.
So, and other young ladies out there, young men out there, there is help. You don't give up if they tell you that they can't give accommodations. They surely can. And there are resources out there. Okay. And so now, Abi, tell me a little bit more about your podcast. What are some of your plans for your podcast? Like, what are you planning to do with this platform?
That's a really, really good question. I think mostly the way it started out was I just kind of wrote down like a list of friends who I knew were kind of asking about it, or who I knew had ADHD. They told me kind of after I was sharing that. I was like, oh, I had no idea. And pretty much the plan was just to talk to them and have conversations with them. And lately, it's kind of more foreign to, like I'm finding all these really cool like content creators and people like you, and who are here kind of trying to do very much the same thing as me. So like there is a community out there, and it's been really neat to see what other folks are doing. And I would really, really like to sort of expand my horizons, I suppose, just in terms of the people that I interview. If it's not just my friends, which is great, having my friends, they have so much wisdom to share too. But it's really exciting to kind of open up that interview pool, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah. And honestly, like I don't know. I don't like have any really huge expectations, but I'm really, really excited to see where it could go. And like, even if it helps one person and nobody else, it's worth it. Like, I think
goodness.
that's it.
Okay, because that's like the best thing I've heard all week. And as you were speaking, I'm like, now that's perfect to start it, because now you started it for all the right reasons and you're going with it for all the right reasons. I just saw that there were a few people, as I started to share my story, there were a few people out there that were helped by that. And now they want to come in and share their stories as well. And so I just kind of reached out to my friends and I said, hey, let's have a conversation. This is so organic. I can imagine that's going to be an absolutely beautiful thing. It's going to give other people an opportunity to have someone to relate to who's being real with it. You're not seeking to gain new clients, by doing this. You're really truly looking to help and I love that, just one person. You just have one person here. There's one person out there listening to what we're saying, and it can, we never know that, that kind of pebble in the water, right? We never know where the ripple effects will end up, but it's absolutely a wonderful and beautiful goal that you have. So that's so awesome.
I mean, I just know like how much the knowledge helped me, like just how much it changed my life. Like, are you kidding me? Like, if I had known about this before, how different would my life have been? Things like that. And I don't want to like dwell on that, because I love how my life has been. But like what more could I have done? Or things like that. But I don't know. I just think it can be a really amazing thing to know.
Yes. I think that in all, on its own, that your podcast is going to have a therapeutic effect for many people, because it's going to be a place that they can go to where they'll feel the genuine desire to help, the genuine desire to educate. So that's just, like I said, you just can't beat that one. All right. So, okay. So now I did have some other questions prepared, but it's more kind of going into because I know we talked a little bit about what childhood was like for you personally, but what was it like for you, just, family life? Like, did you have siblings, and, how were your parents as far as how they would respond to some of the things that you now know to be, due to ADHD?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love this question. This is actually something that I ask my guests on my podcast. It's like, okay, what's a moment from your childhood that you've recently realized was, oh, wait a second, like that was that. Yeah. So, I mean, I had the most amazing childhood. I grew up in Alaska, actually, spent the first 12 years of my life there. And I kind of grew up outside. We would be in the backyard every afternoon. Just playing outside. And I think, like, it was so good. Like, I just look back on it so fondly. And, in school, I was placed in like a highly gifted program at a pretty young age. And I kind of, went through that as like, you hear this this trope of like the gifted kid. So that was me. Like, you know, I was in this program. I was, you know, and then I came to middle school where, you know, we moved to Washington State and there wasn't that program anymore, but I was still like really excelling in school. And then through high school, I was like, this is a breeze. Like, are you kidding me? This is, you know, I was doing really well. Yeah. So, you know, I was pretty much like a good student my whole life, which is why, you know, we never knew really anything, you know, about like what was going on here. But man, I mean, I definitely think it was more, I think about third grade, especially. I had a teacher who, you know, she was pretty strict, but man, I learned so much that year. And I don't think she knew what to do with me because she actually put me at a desk by myself in the back of the classroom facing the wall, because when I was in the table groups, I would be talking during the lesson. Like, I'd be talking to my friends and things like that. And I don't necessarily remember talking being that disruptive, or, you know, I don't remember being all that like sad or offended by it necessarily. Like, it didn't really like affect me negatively. But looking back on that, I'm like, wow. So like there must have been something going on there that wasn't going on with other kids, you know, and things like that. And that's also the same year that my mom put me in theater. Like, that's, I love theater. I've been doing it forever. And, you know, the teacher immediately noticed a difference when I started that. And because it was an outlet. It's like such a creative space where I can, you know, focus that energy. And that helped me in school. Yeah. And, you know, it's just really neat to look back on that and be like, wow, okay. You know, like that is all that's explained now. And that's why, you know, that's why I feel so much better when I'm, you know, doing art and theater and things like that.
Nice.
Yeah, so I think that's probably the biggest part of childhood for me.
Oh my goodness! So that you said two so very important things during that. You know, you shared first and foremost that you were actually separated. You were actually kind of put in a desk to yourself, facing a wall. And this is something that I speak to, and this is something that is so unintentional. Okay, by many teachers, sometimes parents, siblings, you know, family members, friends, even, that they unintentionally mistreat those who are hypersensitive, those who are differently made. Okay, those, you know, those who are wired differently, right? And it's because they, and like you said, they don't know. Sometimes they don't know what else to do. That's often they don't know what else to do with them. But it becomes so important for people to get educated about, you know, how to know, you know, how do we appropriately deal with a child who talks a little more than the other children do. And interestingly, now the second most important thing that you said actually speaks to the hows of how you deal with some of these, you know, hyperactive, hypersensitive kids, right? And so when you're dealing with hyperactive kids, then you have to give them opportunities to get that energy up and out. So, you know, often with the kids and the parents, I call it the antsies or whatever we need to call it. But, you know, they have, whether it come by way of mouth or body or whatever, right? They get kind of the antsies and it just kind of have to go, right? They have to go. And so, but if you give them a quick outlet and you let them release some of that energy, then they can come back and actually sit still without all of that. So some are always for the very young. I love to recommend that you let them kind of go outside if it's allowable. Go outside for it and just take a lap or two. You know, as fast as they can, right? You know, or if it's in a house, down the hall and back, because that's what I told one lady. Down the hall and back. Tell her go, and if she still feels like and then check in with her and ask her, do you still have the antsies? Because this was during like the COVID. They had 5-year-olds distance learning. And, and so we have this little girl who truly has ADHD, unable to sit in front of this stupid screen.
Yeah,
And,
those are
right? Can you imagine? And so I told the mom, I said, here's what you do. First of all, you inform the teacher that she gets a little bit anxious, during class. So there may be times where she has to come off camera for a little bit of time so that you can have her run down the hall and back, right? And I said, tell her, run down. Ask her, do you have the ANSIs? And okay, you have the ANSIs? Okay, take a run down and back, right? And then if she comes back, ask her, do you still have the ANSIs? Are you sure? Okay, if you're not sure, go run, right, and come back. And what that did was that helped this little girl be able to come back and sit in front of the screen for a little while longer. It's huge. So you're talking about just, and if this comes up in your guys' conversations, just understanding that sometimes it's about getting the negative energy up and out, because it's that, and sometimes it's just energy. But then because there's so much of it, so much of a buildup, then it causes us to have to put thoughts into what it means, right? And this is where, for our young ladies who are less likely to run in circles all over the place, right? This is where you get a lot of the emotional stuff. Yeah. So now you have all this energy built up inside of you, and your mind starts to think, it starts to almost feel painful. So then your mind starts to think, there's something that's upsetting me. Right. That's why I'm having this feeling. So then the body causes the brain to think of it in a certain way. And then if we don't understand why it's there, well, there's nothing happening. Like, no one's doing anything to me. So why am I angry right now? Right? Yeah. Then what happens is that negative energy, it actually grows as we have these thoughts. Right? So then the whole mind-body interaction causes even more upset.
Yeah. Real. And I think with little girls especially, I look back on little, third grade me, girls tend to present with the inattentive form of ADHD. So there's three different types. There's the hyperactive, there's inattentive, and then there's kind of a combo. And girls tend to have the inattentive form, which can manifest in excessive talking and daydreaming and, all sorts of things like that, which are so often dismissed as just like a girl thing, like, oh, she's a girl. She's just like, talking, things like that. That was definitely, the talking was like the clue for me when I was thinking back on that. I was like, oh, that's interesting. But even so, that kind of thing tends to be less disruptive in classrooms than the hyperactive form, which is why so many girls are not diagnosed at like an elementary school age, as like many boys are, because, this isn't, that's not on the teachers, they are trained to look for signs of ADHD, but that training won't necessarily include information about the inattentive kind. They're looking for that hyperactive boy, right? Right. They're not looking for a chatty girl, because that's just how girls are. Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I think it would be really cool to see that like start to shift a little bit. Like, oh, maybe this is something to look into, and things like that. And I think a lot of diagnosis starts in the classroom.
See, it's wonderful because the conversations that you're having now, they're going to prompt more conversation. Mm-hmm. So then, and what now happens is there's an acknowledged need. And now people are now you're going to start seeing trainings come out, girls and ADHD, or girls and, and it's interesting the way it shows up in girls, it's such an important thing to consider. It's the same for many disorders that oftentimes the boys they'll get diagnosed easily and the girls will not. Like with autism spectrum, it's the same. Most of the time the boys are being diagnosed, the girls are not, because girls function very differently, right? Yep. So it's interesting. It's a great conversation that you're having. I'm so excited that you're going to be having more of it. I'm even more excited that you saw a problem and you just picked up and you said, I think I'll do something about it. Because there's so many people that don't do anything about it, So it was so absolutely wonderful to have you today on the Lafaya Way Show. You are so awesome.
I'm so honored that you asked me to be your guest. Like, for real, it really makes everything feel, I don't know. I was telling Colleen earlier, but it makes everything feel real in a way.
Yeah.
It's just really exciting, and I can't wait to see where it goes.
Well, I think that especially when someone can come out and actually try to do something, that should always be rewarded. And I think that just in the work alone, you get the reward. But I'm so excited that I get to be a piece that reinforces wonderful, heartfelt, beautiful work. Okay. So have a wonderful, wonderful evening where you are. Because I think we're just now getting on 4:30 and you're about 7:30
Yes, sir.
your time. And Colleen, we'll have you go ahead and we'll end for today. Thank you everybody for joining us, and make sure to stay you and stay true.